Sean and Reid, I don't think you need a lot of introduction. Okay, Reid Hoffman, I'll start introducing him. Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, I often call him the godfather of social media, because not only did he found LinkedIn, which is well known, but back in 1997, he had a company called SocialNet. Yeah, sit over there if you wouldn't mind, Sean, because I like the visual directionality. So Reid has been doing social companies since 1997. And in some ways, SocialNet was a real strong predecessor of what has followed. He also was in the very first round of financing for Facebook, along with Peter Thiel, which was arranged more or less by Sean, because at that time, Sean was the president of Facebook. Sean was a co-founder of Napster. He's an absolutely key factor in turning Facebook into the service that it is today. Many of the features that have led to its extraordinary success were either co-created by him, advocated by him, or implemented by him. I worked very closely with Mark Zuckerberg for a very critical early year, and he's still quite involved in the company. So, the theme is what follows social media. And I really wanted to say that just because we hear so much about social media, I just wanted to really start out at least by taking the biggest possible view. There is sort of a presumption now that, the social media is so ubiquitous that it's sort of the phase we will be in indefinitely, kind of. And I'm curious whether you two look at it that way, or whether you actually think that down the road, in the maybe not distant future, given the pace of change that Jeffrey and others have talked about, we will be doing something fundamentally different. Sean, you want to take a stab at that one? I mean, is social media the digital reality we will be in for the rest of our lives, or how will it morph in the biggest possible sense?
Well, if I had a really clear answer to that question, I'd probably already be working on it.
Which you might be.
I might be, yeah. I don't know. I think the idea that there's one sort of digital paradigm that we're existing in at any given moment is sort of a fallacy. I don't really feel like I feel like this is sort of a construct that's invented by the media, in the sense that there's usually an 800-pound gorilla, or like a dominant player within a particular industry, or a player that's ascendant. And the media likes to play out this drama between the ascendant player and the dominant player, but that has actually very little to do with the sort of reality of people's day-to-day lives. So if you're asking the question sort of from an industry level perspective, I think, yes, obviously there will be a whole different dialogue 10 years from now. 10 years from now, will the day-to-day usage of something like Facebook have changed significantly? I think probably not. The
day-to-day reality of Facebook will not have changed significantly?
I think the day-to-day engagement of users with something like Facebook will not have significantly changed. That doesn't mean that there won't be other paradigms that have come to not necessarily replace it, but augment it.
Yeah, Reid.
So since you started with a huge question, let me frame a little bit. So I think one amplification of what Sean's saying is that I don't think social goes away. If you look at what is critical for us and what's meaningfulness in our lives, how we connect to other people, our friends, our colleagues, we are social animals, right? So the fact that there is a bedrock of kind of social media, that's not transient. What's interesting is how does that evolve, and how does that have discontinuous leaps into new and interesting things?
Yeah.
Right. So, I tend to think that what you see in a lot of social media right now is a tendency to just kind of surf it and play with it. I think you'll see more purpose-driven behavior out of it, like more understanding of how to use this tool and how to use this tool to have a better life, right? And being proactive about it. I think that's true both in the personal and the professional sense. I think you'll see amplifications, like for example, right now, even though you have kind of groups technologies on both Facebook, LinkedIn, and other places, you don't have a systematic use of it. I think as social evolves, that'll be another area that'll get much deeper. So I think the frame is not, social was a intermediate phase that goes away. I think it's a foundation on which things are built, even things that will be discontinuously large. But that's, I think, the way to look at it.
Well, actually, you're on the board of Zynga. and which is Exhibit A, and a point that John Doerr has been making quite strongly, which is that we are on the cusp of the creation of a range of companies across industries that are built on top of the social graph in some sense. Zynga being the gaming company that is now worth several $billion, as you're happy to know, I'm sure, in gaming on top of Facebook, basically. Do you think that's reasonable the way John talks about it? You know, that we are about to see the creation of a whole set of companies across industries that are on top of these other platforms?
I think there certainly will be some. I don't know if the kind of the 2.0 moniker or the 3.0 moniker or whatever the next thing that we're always so hot after will necessarily be an entire ecosystem of different things built on this. I think there will be some essentially killer apps, some things. Like, for example, I think gaming is one of the natural extensions of a deeply social media, because while people play games by themselves, it's usually more fun for most people to play it with other people, right? And so part of what, for example, even simple games like the ones that Zynga, why do people do Farmville? Partially because I'm doing it with you, right? I'm interacting with you and doing it. Now, I think that there will be other interesting new apps, but I think that the question will be I don't think it's going to be I don't think that the only iteration is going to be applications on these frameworks. I think that there will be new fundamental structures to how people interact and new kinds of both productivity and fun applications. Some of them leveraging the infrastructure, some of them new.
Sean, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, to riff off something Reed was saying, I mean, I think that gaming is sort of one of the first obvious categories of applications that sit on top of these, kind of this platform shift. What we haven't seen much of is a move away from these frivolous kind of entertainment-driven applications towards apps whose fundamental purpose is getting things done.
Yeah.
Well, we're working on that.
Well, did you notice that Vonage...
You guys are, and causes to some extent.
You saw that Vonage launched a free telephony application on Facebook this week, which allowed any Facebook member who shared that app to do free phone calling out of their Facebook identity to someone else's Facebook identity anywhere on the planet. That, to me, was a kind of a new kind of thing that we haven't seen enough of up to now.
Utilitarian.
Yeah,
right.
Real utility.
Yeah, and I think that, that's interesting. That's an extension of social media as a communication platform. What I think is interesting is group forming behavior. Mm-hmm. So, and this Reed was alluding to this, how do you use these platforms to organize and aggregate power? So how do individuals use these platforms and use the power of being connected all the time to everyone they know to actually do interesting things? Where does this intersect with politics? Where does it intersect with government? Where does it intersect with all forms of sort of group forming and community behavior? We've seen a little of that, but it's been so frivolous. We haven't seen much of that as it pertains to useful applications for getting useful things done in the real world.
Well, among the many long things on your resume is the fact that you created causes on Facebook. Is that one of the reasons you did it?
This might be a plug for causes, I'm not sure.
I think it is.
Well, I mean, but you see causes is typically seen as a way to raise money for nonprofits. Cool, but I know you think of it as having quite a bit bigger potential role. Can you just quickly talk about what that might be?
Sure. I mean, to me, it's definitely not really about raising money. Raising money is just one thing that activists do. It's one thing that we do in our political and social lives. The goal is really, how do you take all of those things, all the tools that people use, to organize and make them brain dead simple and apply a little bit of viral optimization, a little viral math to the entire process. So things like collecting petition signatures, lobbying public officials, suggesting that governments do certain things, essentially all the things you do when you aggregate power. And that whole tool set is something that we've been working on, and a lot of other interesting companies have been working on.
Okay, I'd like you both to answer this question. What is the most interesting social opportunity that Facebook is not doing and will not be likely to be done in conjunction with Facebook?
Well, my earlier answer to that was games.
With or without Facebook?
Well, it was the thing that Facebook...
You mean your answer when you invested in Zynga? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. But what's your answer now?
I'm thinking.
Sean thinks fast. You got another one while he's thinking? I can think of one that I think you think. Can
Okay, go for it, yeah.
Well,
Now I'm spinning it.
I happen to know Sean. I mean, you have it's well known amongst certain circles you're involved with
Just
chat
make
roulette.
me look smart.
You're involved with chat roulette in some sense, right? We don't know exactly how. You haven't really talked about it much publicly. It's been written about.
I don't think it has been written about, actually.
Well, yes, you said something about it on stage in another place where I was with you. So why does chat roulette seem interesting to you? Let's just start it with that way. Not because of the famous masturbational piece, but
I think
Because
that's
we all-
infamous.
infamous. I mean, let's face it, it's not shocking to say that is what it's most famous for, but I know you think that really is irrelevant to what its long-term potential might be.
Well, I mean, so I think the move to live is pretty interesting, and nobody's nailed live. Nobody's nailed live video. There's sort of one-to-one live video had sort of been figured out with things like Skype, and never really got figured out on Facebook for whatever reason. Probably because Facebook platform was morphing so rapidly. It was hard for a lot of the kind of early communication apps to succeed. Facebook didn't quite know what it wanted out of platform initially. So I think live video, there's a lot of live video startups that were founded in kind of the mold of YouTube, essentially just directories and sort of search and discovery of content. That doesn't really work with live. That almost inevitably leads to some sort of porn application. It's not interesting to people to kind of find some other random person to talk to who just happens to be on. So there was something interesting about chat roulette in terms of its ability to randomly connect you to someone, to just throw you into a conversation, this kind of idea of eliminating all approach anxiety. There's sort of there's no adverse signaling associated with it because you're just thrown into a conversation with someone. You can imagine that moving from a one-to-one medium to a one-to-many medium, where over time, the more interesting people rise to the top. And you start directing more and more traffic automatically using this algorithm towards the people who are more interesting. And one way of defining more interesting is simply, who doesn't get nexted? Who do people spend a lot of time?
Nexting being when you go to the next person on chat roulette, you just click next and then you zip to another random connection.
Yeah, so
Who doesn't get nexted?
Who doesn't get nexted? That probably likely means that they're not a penis, or that they're not kind of dressed in a gorilla outfit. Actually, if they're dressed in a gorilla outfit, they might not get nexted. But it probably means they're more likely to be a cute girl, and they're less likely to be a penis. They're more likely to be interesting. They're less likely to be just sort of like, hanging out with nothing to say. So over time, the more interesting people rise to the top, and you can direct more and more traffic to them. So you could imagine how something like this evolves towards a platform for live performance, which the internet hasn't really seen yet.
Good answer. Reed, have you come up with anything?
Well, obviously, I think the kind of social and professional spheres are different. I'll interpret your question to be kind of what's on the social sphere.
Well, you're already doing it. LinkedIn is an answer to my question I should have actually acknowledged to begin with. Right.
So obviously, I think there's a tremendous amount happening in kind of the learning to proactively use professional tools in order to be more effective. Whether it's thinking about yourself as a business and what is the business intelligence that you need in order to operate more effectively. People, for example, do research on industries and companies on LinkedIn. But to not just make it a kind of a LinkedIn piece, I think one of the interesting questions of whether or not it will play out or not, and there's been a lot of speculation about this in the Valley, is essentially social search, and whether or not that will be Google, that'll be Facebook, or that'll be a third party altogether in terms of how that plays out, or if there's a there is, I think, an interesting new thing. Although I think, I don't know if Facebook's working on it or not.